Hello again. This is going to be our first installment for Chapter 7, which is building those market competitive compensation systems. Now, please do pay attention because these concepts are going to be a part of your project, so you'll definitely want to pay attention here. So, why is it important to have market competitive pay systems? I know you know the answer to this, right? To attract and retain your great employees. So I'm sure that the book has a number of other reasons, but really that's what we've been focusing on, right? We want to make sure that our employees understand that we are competitive with others in our industry, in our geographic location, and therefore they will want to come to work for us as well as to stay with us. It also is going to be important, and we'll talk about this later in the chapter, that it fits in with the overall corporate strategy. Okay, so who are those mission critical roles, and are you going to want to pay above the market for those? And maybe there are others that are important but not as important, so you might lag the market or pay less than the market. So you're really going to have to be very strategic and thoughtful in how you develop your market competitive pay systems. So the next step is that strategic analysis. So if we go all the way back to Chapter 1, you'll remember that when we think about strategy, okay, we've got to look in the external market and the internal market. So outside from our organization, it's really important that we understand what is going on in our industry right now. Is it a growth industry? Is it collapsing? What's happening in that industry? Also, who are our competitors? And competitors you can think about them very broadly as well as very narrowly. So when Southwest Airlines was starting, they went from Dallas-Fort Worth to Houston to Austin, and what they were really talking about was they're competing against buses or cars or any form of transportation. And so they wanted to make it as cost effective as possible as well as inexpensive. So understand that your competitors aren't just other airline industry competitors, but again, buses, cars. How can you compete against those other entities? Then you also need to look internally. Internally. What's our budget? Okay. What are the strengths that we have internally? Are we going to be able to pay people the amount that we need to? All right. So all of those are important. You can look up what a compensation survey is, and we'll talk much more about that. A compensation plan is just that selection and implementation of pay level and pay mix. So you'll be able to see that in your pay structure that we've been talking about over a specified period of time. So, surveys. You can do one yourself. You can hire somebody else to do it. So there are many different places that people can look. There are PayScale and companies like that. So what do we want to gain from that? Information. Not a shock, right? We want to get information from our competitors. We want to know, what are they paying? We want to know what are they offering in terms of their benefits? How are they being creative and innovative that maybe we can follow along? So we just need to keep abreast of how much and what they're doing. So some companies choose not to develop their own surveys, which makes sense, right? If I ask my competitor, well, how much are you paying and how are you being innovative? Strangely enough, they may not want to tell me exactly how they're doing that. So that's why we need to just, again, be thoughtful. Another really big consideration is It takes a lot of skill to develop a survey, to implement a survey, to analyze the results of the survey, to provide good recommendations based upon that survey. So we really may not have those skills in-house. Okay, so that's a huge issue, and one of the big reasons why many companies choose not to do their own. All right, so why would employers want data specifically on employee benefits? We've talked about this as well. About 1/3 of total rewards, of total compensation, is benefits. We also have more latitude in our benefits and what we're offering. That's where we might be able to reduce some or increase some with those discretionary benefits. Companies are being much more creative today than they have been in the past in terms of, say, really trying to understand all the different people that are working for them, because there are different generations in the workforce. People are looking for different types of benefits that are meaningful for them. So for the younger employees, student loan repayment or help with student loans. You have some companies that for everything that you contribute into your student loan, they're going to contribute into your 401k up to a certain amount, of course. Other types of flexibility. So employers are really, really interested in benefits and how they can use those innovatively to, again, attract and retain their great employees. All right, so what are some of the published sources for compensation surveys? We've got our professional organizations, SHRM, the Society for Industrial Organization Psychologists. You have the federal government. You have consulting firms. Mercer is a big one that provides that information. I'm sure your book talks about more, but there is, again, a lot of information out there, and that can be from, like I was talking about before, you might have, certain information even on Indeed or payscale.com. In the slides that I originally gave to you guys, there's an exercise where you go through and you're really looking at some compensation survey data that is publicly available to everybody. Why are you going to want to use more than one source? Why do we ever want to use more than one source? Because each one has their own perspective. They might be asking the survey, or their surveys may ask the questions in different ways. They may be trying to get at more of the base wage, or some might be trying to get at more of the benefits. So you've got these organizations that are looking at different perspectives. They may analyze the data differently. They may ask different questions. So we need to get lots of survey data, bring it together, see what makes the most sense for us, and pull out that data that is most useful for us in making our decision. Bureau of Labor Statistics. So let's flip over. You guys can watch these videos on the employment cost index, but I would like to show you the types of data. So again, this data that's publicly available, and it's massive and it's really strong, but right up at the top you can see one of the major things that we have to deal with, and that is it is a massive amount of data. I'm going to give you that, but also it's dated. This is the current data that's coming out of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and it's May 2018. All right, so perhaps soon they'll have May 2019 data. Well, you guys know a lot of stuff is going on right now that's going to really affect who's hiring, where they're hiring, how much money they're paying. The federal government does not have that data right now. Okay, in fact, I doubt anybody does, but there are, again, these consulting firms are probably going to be your best bet, and they're really working hard to understand what's going on out in this world and how the COVID-19 is going to affect all of these areas of compensation. But what you do get here, again, amazing amounts of information. Later on in the chapter, we're going to talk about percentiles, we're going to talk about quartiles, we're going to talk about median, and how median is better than the mean for a lot of these things because the mean or the average gets affected by those outliers. All right, just giving you a little tease for the statistics that we'll be talking about later. So what they're going to show you, industries. So again, for your project, you're going to be able to look, you've got to compare to, what's going on in your industry. Make sure you're comparing to that industry. You've also got geography, is very important. As we scroll down here. What are you going to see? Employment of human resource managers by area. Okay, you can see how much they're being paid in these different areas. You can see that's the average annual mean wage in these different areas. So again, whenever you're going to be comparing your company to others, you're going to have those benchmark jobs. It's really important that you're able to compare apples to apples as much as you can. And the federal government does a great job collecting all of this data. So this is the Employment Cost Index. And the one that I want to show you is the one that's up top here, right? Who relies on it? A lot of people rely on this data that comes from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. But business owners and human resource professionals in particular are making decisions, right? How much should we increase our employees' pay or not, all right? So then again, if we're making comparisons, we're looking at trying to figure out how much should we pay compared to our competitors, what's in the market. We need to be able to identify this relevant labor market. Relevant labor market has to do with industry, location, those types of things. But also, we should be really careful to think about how that relevant labor market is going to either expand or contract based upon the type of job. So if you're looking for a CEO of a major top 100 organization, your relevant labor market is probably the world. It is probably multiple industries. There's no reason why you would have to stick within the same industry. I mean, it's nice if people have that same information, but maybe the skill set associated with being a chief executive is more important to you than industry-specific knowledge, okay? So you want to understand that. If it's a receptionist, you probably can be quite local, right? You can be just put an ad in the paper, or even like on the University of Mississippi website, people will be looking and will apply for that job. So keep all those things in mind. Benchmark jobs. The book does a really good job of defining what those are. So I want to make sure that you look at that definition, but it's basically multiple companies have it. We're going to define it similarly, and we'll be able to find some data across multiple organizations on this one type of a job. We use these benchmarks because my organization may have hundreds of jobs that are unique to me, okay? So we go through the process that we went through in Chapter 6 of all that internal equity, right? We want to make sure that we are internally consistent. So we do our job descriptions, we do our analysis, descriptions, and then we get into our job evaluation. We assign those points. We create a structure internally, okay? We have those points, so if we can pick certain jobs along those point values, then we can get a really good idea of how well we match to the market. And again, we'll talk about this more later on in the chapter, but I want you to understand that it's really critical that we do a good job of picking what those benchmark jobs are, and they need to cover the spectrum of that job structure. So again, starting if you're doing administrative assistant type of jobs, you might have an administrative assistant, and goes all the way up to an executive assistant. So have like 3 or 4 jobs along that continuum that you can find in multiple organizations, and then you're going to have a much better idea of how well you are matched to the other organization. All right, I think that's all I have for right now. Thank you guys, and I will look forward to talking with you soon.